no, 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 no. Huh. That's it? Well, a few days ago the rest of the Star Guardian event was released, which means that everything is out, there is nothing more to come, and we can finally review the big summer event of 2022. Last year, while the big summer event did receive some backlash, it was ultimately saved by the Arcane event that followed. But this year, I don't think there is anything else coming before winter. Unless... Regardless, when Star Guardians were confirmed for the big 2022 summer event, people's expectations were high. The casual audience always liked Star Guardians, so they were just happy to have something more. The nerdy community was curious because there was no Void event, so surely it was because the Star Guardian event would be bigger. And the hardcore community? Look, they don't like anything and they still play the game. But there were also those who were skeptical. According to the teasers, this would be the third time a visual novel would return. Technically the fourth time if you count the Arcane version. And by this point people knew that a visual novel can't carry the entire event. So people expected something more. Something that never arrived. Before the event started, Riot showed us the timeline. It's this massive thing with all the dates for all the interesting things that would happen. In fact, there was 23 points of interest. The first thing in line was a lore article. This one summarized all the Star Guardian stories that happened so far. It was pretty good for people who were unfamiliar with the story. And then there was the new story on Universe, which set up the story of the 2022 event. The story was really good, but that's just stories on Universe these days. They are nearly always good. And even my coverage of that story was popular. And then there was a teaser video, and then a music video, and then the second teaser video, and then an article showing us what we can buy, and then there is the event trailer video. And that's exactly what these points of interest were. Besides the new Star Guardian sessions, only 5 of these points were something bigger. 2 of them were the cinematic videos, the one with Zaya crying and then the one with Akali, and then 3 of these were vlogs from Wild Rift. Now don't get me wrong, these vlogs were awesome, but they could have been just 1 star on the timeline. Everything else was either teasers or showcases of skins that you could buy. So people were left wondering, is this what the event is going to be? Where is the meat of this event? Why should I log into the game? And so, people logged in to find out. The first thing people were struck by was the Star Guardian hub. This was a pretty nice and interactive place that led you directly into the visual novel. Which is when people realized we got another visual novel. Now, every time a visual novel came out, it was always an improvement compared to the previous one. Spirit Blossom blew us away with the base version. The Ruination cranked up the number of backgrounds and sound effects, and it even added the map. And now, when it came to the Star Guardians, I am glad to say it is an improvement once again. This time, not only were the backgrounds animated, but a lot of the story elements were animated too. And there were even some mini-cinematics. It was a clear technical upgrade over what we got during the Sentinels of Light. Although, we should mention that some older computers had a harder time with it. Also, for the first time, we didn't play as a new unknown character. In Spirit Blossom, we were playing as ourselves, In Sentinels, we played as an unknown sentinel, but in Star Guardians, we played the role of Kaisa, which had an unfortunate effect on the storytelling. In the past, you were able to choose ridiculous dialogue to express yourself, even if the tone of the dialogue didn't fit. But this time, since you were playing as Kaisa, all the answers were written from Kaisa's perspective. So even if the last visual novel had the illusion of choice, here you didn't even feel the illusion. You just knew that what you said didn't matter because you were playing as Kaisa, someone with an already established story and personality. So in a way, playing as an unknown character works better for the purposes of a visual novel. But that's not all. My main point of criticism remains the same as it was during Spirit Blossom and the Sentinels. Games like Mass Effect have a brilliant illusion of choice. And that's because there you know that sometimes your choice matters and sometimes it doesn't. But you don't know which one happens when, which gives you this itch to take every dialogue seriously. Here, because you know your dialogue options never change the story, the illusion doesn't work, and oftentimes people picked random answers. Now, the reason why Riot avoided giving us meaningful decisions that would change the story is because they don't want to lock players out of the story. They want everyone to have the option to explore all dialogues, no matter what dialogue you chose before. And while this works for someone who doesn't want to miss a story beat, I still believe it should be abandoned. My honest feedback is, next time you give us a visual novel, make sure the different dialogue options lead to vastly different story outcomes. I want to play Detroit become Yordle. This will make people care because every player would have their own story. And if you're afraid that people will be angry if they miss an Easter egg, it's simple. Give us a reset button. In nearly every story-driven game, you can load a previous save anyway. If you let us reset the story at any point, no one would be mad and everyone would be happy. So again, after Spirit Blossom and Sentinels of Light, I once again ask you, give us meaningful choices. But besides that, I have to admit, once again, on a technical level, the visual novel this year was quite good. Speaking of which, let's talk about the other half of the visual novel, the story. If you played through the first chapter and stopped, I don't blame you. The story took a really long time to ramp up, but fortunately it was quite good from chapter 2 forward. We learned about who Fiddlesticks really was, Morgana became a decent villain, and it was cool to see Akali turn to the other side. We'll get back to that in a moment. However, even though the story took a really long time to ramp up, it concluded really quickly. You didn't really see Akali's descent towards the dark side. In one chapter, she doubted the purpose of the first star, but still helped people. And in the next chapter, she didn't care if people died. As long as she didn't see them die, it was fine. Similarly, Zoe was always the villain who was trying to kill the other Star Guardians. But one chapter later, she was helping the Star Guardians defeat Fiddlesticks. Simply said, the twists happened way too quickly and they did feel out of character. With that said, just like it was during the Sentinels of Light, the overarching story of the entire event was good. And we learned some really interesting new facts about the universe. However, a lot of that interesting info was only briefly mentioned in the visual novel, and instead we learned about it from the dev posts. Stuff like how every fallen Star Guardian turns into Fiddlesticks, or how becoming a Star Guardian actually wipes everyone's memories of you. These facts are awesome, but they only briefly appeared in the visual novel. And a lot of these facts were only found through context. I will cover the entire story in a separate video, but with only minor spoilers. I have to mention the twist at the end was awesome. The twists that came before that, let's just say that Akali had like 5 twists in like 30 seconds. And it did undermine the overall story. In fact, after finishing the entire story, I can tell you right now, the cinematic really was just a fancy skin spotlight for Akali's skin. But that's not all. Besides the main story, there were also the side stories for all the Star Guardians. So how good were those? Do you like slice of life stories? You know, the ones you can see in animes, like having high school problems, being addicted to a certain kind of food, or improving your grades? Yeah, those stories covered that. But if you only care about the main story of the Star Guardian universe, you didn't miss on anything if you didn't do them. They essentially gave you context for the Star Guardians' personalities. And admittedly, they were good at giving us context. I do believe this is a response to a criticism during Sentinels of Light, where some people really didn't like locking the main story behind games. So here they only locked the side stories. Anyway, some of these mini side stories were funny, like Akali's stories with Noodle Bill, and Neela even spewed out some facts about the beginning of the universe. But what I hated about these is that they were completely separate from the main story. While there, Akali had a mental breakdown and she was drowning in the shadows of her depression. Here, she had a nice bowl of ramen with Kaisa. At the same time, being cheerful and funny. These stories had completely different tones and they were happening at completely different times. And because of that, they felt so disconnected. But those are not really a big issue. At least once you learn how the stories actually work. As I mentioned, most people actually skipped the stories because the first impressions were not that great. It took the story a really long time to ramp up, so people started searching for joy elsewhere. Here you have to understand that to gamers, gameplay is king. Gameplay is the reason why people interact with games. And when people logged into the game, they noticed the gameplay was exactly the same. Or at the very least, there was nothing new. What's funny here is that during the last two summer events, gameplay was king. During Spirit Blossom, we got Nexus Blitz as a brand new experience. And during Sentinels of Light, we got the Ultimate Spellbook as a brand new experience. So from this perspective, like it or not, but Sentinels of Light were better than Star Guardians. But that's not a surprise. If you go back to my video about the Ruination, you'll see that among all the chaos that has happened, I praised Ultimate Spellbook. That game mode still made the event fun. So why was it that when Ultimate Spellbook was confirmed to be the game mode of the 2022 Star Guardians, people didn't like it? Well, the answer has multiple parts. First of all, this time around, Ultimate Spellbook was not special in the community's eyes. It is true that it was reused from the Sentinels of Light, but since then, Ultimate Spellbook was brought back every 3 months. So when it was brought back again, that's exactly what the community's reaction was. Again? And no, a pink crown doesn't really make the game mode feel like it's Star Guardians. And also no, Ari's announcer didn't help. Also, the announcer is not new, it is reused from the original Star Guardians 2017. But here's the thing, after Sentinels were over, Riot told us that Ultimate Spellbook was so successful they will try to support it in the future. So for Star Guardians 2022, they simply did what they promised. They supported the game mode instead of abandoning it. But the issue is, you didn't improve the game mode. Adding in new abilities makes it broader, but it doesn't make the game mode any deeper. So in the end, it was exactly what we got before, just Ultimate Spellbook. And it is because of the lack of novelty here that the Star Guardians 2022 didn't feel as memorable. In fact, I genuinely believe the first Star Guardian event was better than this one. Likely because it was more memorable. And that's for one simple reason. It had the king. Gameplay ruled there. It didn't need a visual novel, it only needed one story on universe. And it only needed one game mode. That's because the game mode was the meat of the event. Speaking of which, for a lot of people, the reason why they didn't like Ultimate Spellbook coming back was because people were expecting something else. They were expecting the good old PvE to come back. To which I have to say, you morons. I was genuinely surprised to see so many people suddenly wanting PvE, because for the last 5 years I felt like I was the only one begging for more PvE. The majority of the community was focused on how good the skins look, what would the story be like, how will the visual novel improve, could we see a cool new Summoner's Rift? But not a single comment on a Reddit thread or a comment on a YouTube video mentioned the lack of PvE. And now suddenly people are outraged that there is no PvE? Now don't get me wrong, I am really happy that people are asking for it. I have always said that the best event League had ever seen was Odyssey, followed by Spirit Blossom, followed by the original Star Guardians. But honestly, I'm not surprised that there is no PvE, because Riot didn't get the feedback during Spirit Blossom nor during Sentinels. No one brought it up during the last events. So how would they possibly know the community wants to see PvE in League, when even their data is telling them people don't play it? What I am surprised about though is that there is no PvE, or really anything else that would be new. Where did the budget go? There is no new announcer, no new system for the visual novel, no new game mode, no new map. So what happened? Last time all of these were features that were built from the ground up. Now the music is beautiful, but technically that was outsourced. So if all the tech is the same from the last events, they definitely should have the resources to give us more novelty. So where is the meat? Where is the soul? Where is gameplay? The only thing that exceeded our expectations was the number of skins. This time around we got 16 new Star Guardians in this universe. So you know, maybe that's where the budget went. But the thing is, I would gladly exchange 5 of these skins for a new Summoner's Rift reskin. In the past, Riot clung to the idea that they don't wanna reskin Summoner's Rift, because at a first glance everyone should be able to recognize League of Legends. This philosophy worked over the years, and now people can recognize League of Legends anywhere. But it is starting to bite into what people wanna see in the game. People don't care about new minions or a Rift Herald skin, they want the entire map to feel different. Just like they did in the past. Not just a new hat for Baron, we need a new environment. It doesn't matter that you say that it is the Arcane event, but then I log into the game and everything is the same there. Sure, there is a new spawning platform, which I only see for like 5 seconds at the beginning of the game. For 98% of the entire game, I am in a lane though. So please, Riot, return to your roots. Summoner's Rift is built from asset sections. You can reskin them. Don't say you can't, because the community has been doing it for years. And if it screws with the dragon system that changes the map, then use it for a separate game mode with no dragons. I believe you can pull it off. And interestingly enough, there is a way for Riot to avoid this issue entirely. If Riot doesn't dedicate a team to making new game modes tied to events, they need to bring back Nexus Blitz permanently. And Star Guardians proved it more than anything. People were mad that nothing we got this year was new, including the big game mode that is supposed to carry the event. Now imagine if Nexus Blitz was permanent, and with every event they added new special events into the game mode. Would it change the entire game and force the devs into sinking a lot of money into it? No. But it would surely make it feel like a Star Guardian event. At least more than pretending to be Viego again. Imagine if one of these new events was Dodgeball, and Zoe's Pedal Stars started crossing the entire map, which you had to dodge. Or what if, on each side of the map, one of those Star Guardian heralds spawned, and they charged at each other as you're trying to defend them? Or what if a neutral Fiddlesticks clone spawned in every bush in the game? Riot needs a game mode that is all about fun. One where balancing is secondary, the map could change at any time, and where events could go wild. Now, Riot may argue that they don't wanna release Nexus Blitz because they would be splitting their community once again. ARAM is our casual game mode, we don't need a second one. Which I agree with. But if that's the case, you need to embrace it. You need to give ARAM new skins at the very least. If you don't want to screw with Summoner's Rift, do it with ARAM. Butcher's Bridge was awesome and it is a crime it never came back. Please, we need more of it. But this brings us to the last topic. During the Sentinels of Light, the grindiness of the event was a big issue. It was so big that Riot had to buff it and essentially remove the entire progression system. Thankfully, during Star Guardians, grinding the main story was easy. It usually took you 4 or 5 games per week, which was manageable. When it came to the mini side stories though, things got dicey. The progression rate itself was not too unreasonable. Playing around 10 games per week was usually enough to max out everything by the end of the event, which is definitely above casual play. But it still felt awful to grind these side stories for one big reason. While the main story was split into 5 parts, 4 story chapters and 1 epilogue, the side stories only had 3 levels. So sometimes it just so happened that while you filled 2 chapters of the main story, you didn't even get 1 Guardian level in that time. And even though you were still not behind, and everything was calculated in such a way that you would be done on time by the end of the event, because the progression on the side stories felt slower, a lot of people got the feeling that it is really grindy. With that said, I have to point out that grinding out the tokens was not too bad. People were afraid that it would take ages to get all the tokens, but after finishing the main story I had about 2,200 tokens, with a week of the event still left to go. So pretty much everything besides the side stories was easy to grind. But throughout this entire review I did not talk about Wild Rift. So let's quickly sum up the situation there. Wild Rift got its own separate visual novel focusing on the story of Xayah and Rakan. Honestly, this story was pretty good. But because there was no dialogue options there, it felt more like a visual storytelling and less like you were playing through the story, which ultimately didn't really harm the story at all. Also, let's not forget the RPG element of the progression. In Wild Rift, the story was time-gated by battles against monsters. After each story bit, you would have to play games to charge your Star Guardians, and then you would spend the charge to attack the monsters. You can change your Guardians in the team to change how you charge up. You can also play games to level them up, which also speeds up the charging process. But if you get rid of all of these mechanics, you may realize that all of this is just smoke and mirrors, which hides the fact that this is actually just normal progression where you play games to unlock the story. To which I might add, unlocking the story in Wild Rift was very easy. And at least it did feel like you are playing an RPG game at the same time. Now, when I released the event guide video, I praised Wild Rift. I praised the progression and I called out how it's cool to see that they give you a free skin for the tokens. And that's where they got me. See, what I didn't know is that even though you can get the tokens for free by playing games, you have to pay for the Star Guardian Pass to be able to spend those tokens on skins. Not only that, the extra paid missions actually had a big flaw. After you bought the pass, you would get some extra missions for tokens. But those missions would unlock as sets of 4 or 5. So after you complete all 4 of those missions, 4 more would unlock. This system would be fine if they didn't tell you to destroy 160 turrets. Let me tell you, this is insane if you wanna play ARAMs. But here's what happened to me. I was forced into quickly playing co-op versus AI so that I could destroy as many turrets as possible, only to be met by the same mission again. Only this time I would have to be there for a third of those turrets. by the end of the event, after I spent money on this, I finished only 2 of the 5 mission sets, while still completing the entire story. So I couldn't even buy one of the skins. This was painful. And even Wild Rift is not free from the grindy sins. Now, keep in mind that this video was recorded about a week before the event would end. So it wasn't until the very end that I learned that while the event was going on, some people experienced something horrible. For some people, even after reinstalling the game, the League client would never load the Star Guardian hub. So they could never check the story, but more importantly, they could never even see their own progress. And because they couldn't even click on anything, they couldn't redeem any of the rewards. Now, because Riot didn't really know where the issue was. Looking back, it was most likely an issue with hardware compatibility. But their solution was that after the event would end, they would give everyone their rewards according to their progress. Sounds good, until you realize that people didn't know what their progress was. They couldn't see the hub. And so Riot did the only thing that would make everyone happy. They let the non-grinders win and they unlocked everything for everyone. It didn't even matter if you played a single game. As long as you created an account before the bugs started happening, you would get all the free rewards. So if you did grind games with the intention to unlock all the story, I feel sorry for you because you didn't have to do it. But don't worry, I'm in the same boat. I grinded the crap out of these. And somehow I still wasn't going to make it for some of the side stories. I was ready to start data mining the dialogues, but then Riot Spaghetti Code came to the rescue. And now everyone got to experience the story. That is, if people cared about it. So, where does all of this leave us? Well, for once, I didn't feel like there was a single part of the Star Guardian event that would be bad. Everything was fine. I even got to visit one of the IRL Valorant City parks. And let me tell you, it was awesome! But people were simply expecting something different from what we got. And the official event teaser didn't really help with those expectations. Remember all those emoji shots and how we thought that this would somehow be part of the progression system? Or what about the card opening teaser? Well, that was an Instagram filter. And do you remember the voice-acted parts?
I only see you from missions now, Kaisa. What happened to best friends forever?
Akali, I know I've been...
What happened to those? With all of that said, I can't deny how much work was put into the teasers and the trailers. You could really feel the preparations. It's just a shame they missed out on the one key aspect. League of Legends is a game after all, and gameplay is king. So next time, Riot, please give us PvE. People finally woke up and they are asking for it.